Our next subtitle is the early Civil War. So here we're going to see kind of what the war is shaping up to be in those early years. So there are two fronts to this war, East and West. These are sometimes called the Eastern and Western Theater, and you'll probably hear me refer to them as that. So this means that they're fighting both in the eastern part of the U.S. and also in the western part of the U.S. In the West, we're close to the Mississippi River, is kind of where we're fighting. The Mississippi River becomes very, very important during this conflict because it's one of those avenues that's going to allow things to be transported very easily. So both sides are trying to keep control of the Mississippi River. So in the Eastern Theater, we have the Army of the Potomac, which is named after that river that runs by Virginia and Washington, D.C. And this is just a massive Eastern Union army. I mean, several 100,000 soldiers will fight in the Army of the Potomac, and it's commanded by McClellan. He's the one that kind of creates this army and drills them in the East, and he's the main general on the Eastern Front for the first half of the war. He actually considers overthrowing Lincoln while he is general. But he's not a very good general because he does not make quick decisions and he does not react quickly when something gives him an opening. So he eventually gets on Lincoln's bad side because he cannot do his job. Congress soon calls for millions of volunteers, and many men in the North drop everything and enlist in the Army. The same kind of goes for the South. In fact, in the South, pretty much everyone between the ages of 20 and 40, every man, will fight in the Confederate Army. That's how many people they need for this army. There's kind of a revolving door of Union commanders throughout the war. There's no just one set commander that just takes over. Like we think of Lee as the main commander for the Confederacy. Grant emerges as this main figure, but not until the end of the war. So we're just going to see the Union go through a lot of main commanders for the early years of the war until Lincoln finally settles on Grant. And Grant does have a lot of success in the West in these early years. Now, Winfield Scott, who's the original head general of the Union Army, he comes up with the Anaconda Plan. The Anaconda Plan is in three parts. They plan to blockade the South, take the Mississippi River, and capture the Confederate capital, which is eventually at Richmond after Virginia secedes. Now, they do actually succeed in all three of these things, and it's these three things that will bring the South to their knees and force them to surrender. So the blockade of the South is fully in place by 1862. They take the Mississippi River in 1863, and finally they capture the Confederate capital and end the war in 1865. So this plan, which is put forward very early on in the war, actually does take shape and actually is what leads the Union to win the Civil War. Advance to our next slide, and we'll keep talking about some changes that occur during the Civil War.